You know that the Kenyan public is suffering. So why are politicians flaunting their wealth, as has been asked earlier, and the wasteful use of public resources like helicopters to go to a latrine or a weird bridge opening, when the president claims that we are having austerity measures? By the way, very nice red bottom shoes.
Welcome once again to Havana Media. My name is Boniface Awino, and as usual, I'm going to be your host for today. Now, let me say this. Let me start by saying this, that I think it's high time these leaders should realize that these international media stations or these international interviews do not want the bragging and all that. Now, if there is someone who really ashamed Kenya and ashamed himself in particular is Kimani Ichungwa. I think this interview was done some days back, but it was fortunately that it was uploaded yesterday by the Aljazeer. Something that was very nice. In fact, it was at the right timing that Kimani Ichungwa was being interviewed by Mehdi, and some of the questions that he was being asked, I was really wondering why is it that this guy is so arrogant? Why do you take your arrogance to a place that okay, you need to be humble? This is one of the places that you need to be humble. You just need to answer questions according to the way you've been asked. But now you are showing your arrogance, you're showing everything, the way you are incompetent and how stupid you are. This interview, by the way, made Kimani Ichungwa to look very stupid. And he was even being mocked by one of the ladies concerning the shoes that he was wearing. You're being asked about someone, the former Attorney General, and then you're saying that that person you are asking me is not the Attorney General, and the Attorney General's child has not been abducted. And yet you know very well the question that you're being asked. You know very well what this guy is asking. Instead of just answering the question, you want to do your own thing. You want to answer your own question. You know, sometimes I fail to understand what is really going on with these guys. I really fail to understand sometimes what normally happens with these people. Because you find that what they do or what they say is different from what's supposed to be done. You are asked this question, you are answering this other question, and then you are asking it rudely, to a point that now you are even asking an interviewer, someone who is interviewing you, that do you want to listen, do you want to go by what you hear from human rights, or do you want to go by my words? And I really love the answer that he was given, because this guy, Mehdi was just reading, like he was referring to what has been happening. You are asked that you gave a lot of promises during the time that we're getting into an office. Up to now, the only things that you've accomplished are 19. What do you have to say about that? And then the kind of answers this guy is giving are shocking. I want us to listen to this conversation this interview up to the end. And please don't forget to take a minute, click the subscribe button. You can also like, share, drop me a comment in the comment section. Tell me what you think and where you're watching this video from. Until we meet again, I've been your host, Boniface Awino. Watch this.
You are a close ally and supporter of President William Ruto, who is super unpopular right now because he and you and your party haven't delivered for the people of Kenya. Your 2022 election manifesto made 281 promises. Can you tell our audience tonight how many of those have been fulfilled over the last 2.5 years?
True, as you say. The perception out there is that the administration is quite unpopular, nothing uncharacteristic of any administration 2 years after an election, especially an administration that came into office in the backdrop of a very dilapidated economy with very many promises, as you said, but I can assure you that will change in due course. The implementation of a manifesto is page by page, chapter after chapter.
But you haven't implemented it. That's the problem.
Sentence. It is being implemented.
How many of the 281 promises have been implemented?
I'll not give you a straight answer of 2 or 10 or 200, but I'll tell you.
You're the first politician who said to me, I will not give you a straight answer, just bluntly. I can give you an answer. I've got the answer. It's 14 out of 281 promises. That means 95% of your promises have not been met 2.5 years in.
That is your number, Mehdi, not my number.
It's not my number. It's the number of Mizalendo, a non-partisan parliamentary monitoring organization in Kenya that tracks all parties. They're saying 14 out of 281. I mean, we can run through some of them. President Ruto said he would give free internet and phone calls to Kenyans. He hasn't. He said he would start an inquiry into cronyism. He has not. He said he would ratify the International Convention Against Enforced Disappearances. He has not. I could go on and on. Kenyans are frustrated because They were lied to during the election campaign.
Well, Mehdi, as I told you, that is the perspective of Mzalendo. And that is their target.
Well, has he ratified the International Convention against enforced disappearances?
We have ratified very many international conventions.
But has he ratified the International Convention against He said he would do it straight as he comes to power. It's been 2.5 years. He could do it with a stroke of his pen. Why has he not done it?
He is yet to ratify, but it is
what are you waiting for?
Work in progress. Was there a timeline for its ratification, according to Mzalendo?
Many things had timelines on.
Was there a timeline?
He said he would
no timeline.
He said he would do a public inquiry into cronyism within 30 days. Has he done it?
Public inquiry?
Yeah, a public inquiry to establish the extent of cronyism and state capture and make recommendations. Page 61 of your manifesto. Has he done it? It's been more than 30 days. It's been 2.5 years. This is what Human Rights Watch said last year. Bodies of people showing signs of torture continue to turn up in rivers, forests, quarries, mortuaries. The authorities have yet to investigate or prosecute anyone for these crimes. Kenya has a history of police brutality and lack of accountability for serious abuse.
So
that's Human Rights Watch.
You want to believe what Human Rights Watch said, not what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
I'm going to believe a human rights group over a politician who started by saying, I won't give you straight answers.
It is their take, Mehdi. It is their take. And I didn't come here to give their take. I came here to give my take and the perspective.
So they're wrong, you think? The police officers are being held to account?
They are wrong because the police officers must be held to account.
But
if you read the NADCO report, there are recommendations on what is to be done on state cronyism, on state capture, on extrajudicial killings. That is captured in the NADCO report.
But you haven't done what the manifesto called for on multiple things. And look, you know, and you admitted, to be fair, that people are unhappy. There's a perception of the government that's unpopular. Kenyans have been most upset about the cost of living. And yet, when thousands of young Kenyans took to the streets in protest of your government last year, the finance bill, your government opened fire on them, killed them, forcibly abducted and disappeared them. How do you justify such a violent crackdown on your own citizens in a democracy?
First, let me say this, Mehdi. As you said, because you never allowed me to answer the question on the promises kept. I told you the manifesto is being implemented chapter after chapter, right from housing to the cost of living that you're speaking about. Because, of course, you cannot judge what was to be done in 5 years, in a short 2 years.
Well, some of them you said you would do in 30 days, and you haven't. But just deal with the violence. How do you justify what happened last summer in Kenya?
Now I'm coming to that. You said the cost of living. I can tell you what we've done with the cost of living, from the subsidizing of production rather than subsidizing consumption, as we promised in our campaigns. You remember the first demonstrations after the elections in 2023 were about the cost of living.
Which also were greeted with violence from the state.
And unfortunately, all demonstrations end up with deaths, which is a very unfortunate incident. And it is not true that people demonstrate and you open fire. It is just the nature of what happens with our demonstrations, where they turn violent, and the police have to intervene. And let me say that at this point, it's not just unfortunate. We all regret the loss of life during the 2022 demonstrations and even the demonstrations of June last year. Unfortunate that lives had to be lost, but it was not that fire was opened on young.
Yeah, the way you talk, lives had to be lost. No, lives were taken. Right? People were shot in the head.
No life ought to have been lost, and nobody can justify the loss of life anywhere in the world out of demonstrations.
According to a Reuters investigation, 19-year-old Charles Owino went to a protest, was killed with a gunshot to the head. The police recorded his death as a road accident. 21-year-old Shaquille Obienge, he died the same day as Owino, also shot in the neck. Police recorded his death as a road accident. If these deaths are so regrettable, why is the Kenyan police covering them up?
Fortunately, Mehdi, we have a very robust constitution in the country, the best constitution in sub-Saharan Africa. This constitution has very good and clear safeguards that make sure that everybody is held to account for your actions, including the police. You've mentioned 2 or 3 people. I think from IPOA's records, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, from their records, they have recorded about 60 deaths from last year's demonstrations. And there are some, I think, unfortunately, all demonstrations end up with deaths, which is a very unfortunate incident. And it is not true that people demonstrate and you open fire. It is just the nature of what happens with our demonstrations, that they turn violent, and the police have to intervene. And let me say that at this point, it's not just unfortunate. We all regret the loss of life during the 2022 demonstrations and even the demonstrations of June last year. Unfortunate that lives had to be lost, but it was not that fire was opened on young.
Yeah, the way you talk, lives had to be lost. No, lives were taken. Right? People were shot in the head.
No life ought to have been lost, and nobody can justify the loss of life anywhere in the world out of demonstrations,
According to a Reuters investigation, 19-year-old Charles Owino went to a protest, was killed with a gunshot to the head. The police recorded his death as a road accident. 21-year-old Shaquille Obienge, he died the same day as Owino, also shot in the neck. Police recorded his death as a road accident. If these deaths are so regrettable, why is the Kenyan police covering them up?
Fortunately, Mehdi, we have a very robust constitution in the country, the best constitution in sub-Saharan Africa. This constitution has very good and clear safeguards that make sure that everybody is held to account for your actions, including the police. You've mentioned 2 or 3 people. I think from IPOA's records, the Independent Police Oversight Authority, from their records, they have recorded about 60 deaths from last year's demonstrations. And there are some, I think about 30-something, that are still under investigation. They have dismissed some after close the files after investigation. Therefore, I can assure you, the police may, even somebody within the police force may desire.
Can you tell our audience tonight, how many Kenyan police officers
in the country will not allow you to cover
say that? This is great rhetoric.
Kenya.
How many police officers in Kenya have been?
Hi. Your party seems to be very concerned with the criticism on social media. Why are you more sensitive to this than to the everyday troubles of the Kenyans, such as the rising cases of femicide, the abductions, corruptions?
True, we are very concerned, and I said I'm actually the one who in this show spoke to the issue of femicide because it's a matter that was of great concern to Kenyans. I'll tell you from where I sit. I am less concerned with what people say online, on social media. I had that engagement with somebody yesterday who is in this audience. And I told him, I have been called William Ruto's wife because I work closely with him. And I take it in my stride. But I will have to do my work and do it to the best of my ability. That's my concern, and I believe everybody within the Kenya Kwanza administration is less bothered by what people say online.
How can you say that when in the part one of this show? Hold on. Let me one of this show.
Let me
Ichungwa from Amnesty said a guy did an AI image of the president in a coffin. Was treated viciously, violently. That was not you having a thick skin.
And maybe because you never allowed me to respond to that. Because
I did, but you can respond again if you want.
It's true what Ichungwa was saying and about the gentleman who had his hair shaved. And I say because we are a nation that wants to trust in institutions.